The ship called Horizon came out of hyperspace with a violent shake that threw Captain Jake Morrison against his command chair. Warning lights flashed red across the bridge as sparks flew from damaged control panels. The crew of 30 humans had been traveling for 6 months using their newest and most advanced technology, but it was still crude compared to what they were about to face. Morrison looked at the main screen and felt his breath catch in his throat. Massive structures floated in the darkness of space before them. Each one was larger than any city on Earth, made of materials that seemed to glow with their own inner light. Ships moved between these stations like insects around flowers, but these ships were bigger than anything humanity had ever built. "Captain, we're getting multiple signals," said Lieutenant Ben Hayes from his communication station. His voice was tight with worry. "They're scanning us with technology I can't even identify." Before Morrison could respond, the Horizon was caught in a beam of blue light. The ship stopped moving completely, held in place by forces that their instruments could not measure. Then everything changed around them as they were pulled toward one of the massive stations. Dr. Lisa Carter stood next to Morrison, her eyes wide as she watched alien ships approach them. She was the mission's expert on life forms from other worlds, but nothing in her studies had prepared her for this. The ships around them moved in perfect formation, their hulls made of what looked like living crystal. "They're bringing us somewhere," Carter said quietly. "This isn't random. They have a plan." The station they were pulled into was so large that the Horizon looked like a toy inside it. Mechanical arms reached out and grabbed their ship, holding it steady while other machines began scanning every inch of their hull. Through the windows, the crew could see beings moving around outside, but they were unlike anything from Earth. Some looked like walking crystals that caught and reflected light in rainbow patterns. Others appeared to be made of pure energy, floating through the air without any solid form. Still others resembled giant insects with too many arms and eyes that glowed in the darkness. "Captain," Hayes called out, his voice shaking. "They're requesting we come aboard their station. The translation is rough, but I think they want to talk." Morrison looked at his crew. They had known this moment might come when they left Earth. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe, and now they had their answer. But he could see the fear in their eyes, and he felt it too. "We came here to make contact," Morrison said firmly. "That's what we're going to do." The alien station was a maze of corridors and chambers that seemed to stretch on forever. The humans were escorted by floating robots that made no sound as they moved. The walls around them pulsed with soft light, and the air tasted different from anything on Earth. Finally, they were brought into a vast chamber where 3 alien beings waited for them. The first was a towering crystal creature that stood 12 feet tall, its body catching and bending light into beautiful patterns. This was High Counselor Zephix of the Vorthak. The second being was made of pure energy that shifted between different colors as it moved. This was Counselor Mirtha of the Luminari. The third looked like a giant insect with 6 arms and compound eyes that reflected everything around it. This was Counselor Vextar of the Chitari. Morrison stepped forward, trying to keep his voice steady. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth ship Horizon. We come in peace, seeking contact with other intelligent life." The crystal being made a sound like wind through chimes, and somehow the humans could understand its words. "Another primitive species," Zephix said, its voice filled with boredom. "Carbon-based bipeds with crude chemical propulsion technology. Standard Protocol 7 applies." Dr. Carter stepped forward, ignoring Morrison's warning look. "With respect, Counselor, you haven't even examined our capabilities or learned about our culture. We have much to offer." The insect being clicked its mandibles together in what might have been laughter. "Silence," Vextar said sharply. "Your species shows the typical markers of aggression, territorial behavior, and technological recklessness. You wage wars on your own kind. You pollute your world. You are precisely what we expected." The energy being floated closer, its form shifting from blue to red. "We have seen thousands of species like yours," Mirtha said in a voice like distant music. "You all follow the same pattern. You develop faster than light travel before you develop wisdom. You explore space while still fighting each other. You are dangerous to yourselves and others." Morrison felt anger rising in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. We may have problems, but we're trying to solve them. We came here hoping to learn from more advanced civilizations. Learning requires humility, Zephix replied, its crystal form pulsing with cold light. Your species lacks this quality. Therefore, we invoke Protocol 7. You will return to your home system and remain there for a minimum of 500 years. Perhaps by then you will have matured enough to join civilized society. Carter couldn't stay quiet. 500 years? You're going to judge all of humanity based on a few minutes of conversation? We have studied your species for the past 6 months, Vextar said, its compound eyes reflecting the humans like broken mirrors. Your transmissions, your history, your behavior patterns. You are exactly what we expected. Nothing more. Nothing less. The Council's decision was made without any further discussion. Automated defense platforms would be placed around Earth's solar system. Any human vessel that tried to leave would be destroyed immediately. Earth would be cut off from the rest of the galaxy until humanity proved they were worthy of contact. As the Horizon was escorted back toward human space, Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the alien stations grow smaller behind them. His crew was silent, processing what had just happened. They had traveled farther than any human before them, only to be told they weren't good enough to join the galactic community. Captain, Hayes said quietly. What do we tell Earth Command? Morrison thought for a long moment before answering. We tell them the truth. We've been judged and found wanting by beings who think they know everything about us. We tell them that we've been put in a cage. Carter moved to stand beside him. They dismissed us without really listening. They think they have us figured out. Maybe that's their mistake, Morrison said, watching the blue light of the containment field form around their solar system. They think they know what humans are capable of. They think 500 years in isolation will make us give up or change into something they approve of. Hayes looked up from his instruments. The containment field is in place, Captain. We're locked in. Morrison nodded slowly. The aliens had given humanity exactly what they thought they deserved: isolation and time to think about their mistakes. But what the Council didn't understand was that humans had never been good at accepting limitations. They had always found ways to break free from whatever tried to contain them. Send a message to Earth Command, Morrison said finally. Tell them we've just been caged by beings who think they know us, and tell them that being underestimated might just be the best thing that ever happened to humanity. The Horizon continued its journey home, carrying news that would change everything. Behind them, the Council returned to their normal business, already forgetting about the primitive species they had just quarantined. It was a decision they would regret for the rest of their very long lives. 23 years had passed since the Horizon returned to Earth with news of humanity's rejection by the Galactic Council. In that time, the aliens had completely forgotten about the small blue planet locked behind their containment field. They were too busy with what they considered important matters like mediating trade disputes and maintaining their perfect order across hundreds of worlds. Director Kate Williams stood in the underground command center beneath Geneva, looking at displays that showed construction projects across the entire solar system. The room was filled with representatives from every nation on Earth, all focused on the same goal. What had once been impossible was now reality. Humanity had united against a common threat. The Nexus project is ahead of schedule, Williams announced to the assembled leaders. We've completed 17 hidden shipyards behind asteroids, 43 research facilities on the dark side of Mars, and weapon testing ranges throughout the Kuiper Belt. More importantly, we've done all of this without triggering a single alarm from their monitoring systems. President Chen of the Asian Federation leaned forward in his chair. How can you be certain they're not watching us? Dr. Alex Chen, head of the Xenotechnology Division, stood up to answer. He had spent the last 2 decades studying every piece of alien technology the Horizon had recorded. Their containment field is designed to keep us from leaving, not to spy on us. They set it up and forgot about us completely. To them, we're just another primitive species sitting in timeout. The breakthrough that made everything possible came from an unexpected source. Maria Santos had been a theoretical physicist at the University of Sao Paulo when the Horizon returned. While other scientists focused on alien weapons and ships, she became obsessed with understanding how their containment field worked. The field operates by creating a barrier in normal spacetime, Santos explained to the gathered leaders. But it has a fundamental weakness. It can't stop something that doesn't exist in normal spacetime. My phase shift technology allows our ships to briefly move between dimensions, slipping through their field like it isn't even there. Ryan Murphy, former CIA operative turned head of alien intelligence, added his own findings. For the past 20 years, we've been intercepting their communications. They use no encryption because they've never faced an enemy capable of breaking their codes. We know their military doctrine, their political structure, and most importantly, their weaknesses. Murphy activated a holographic display showing the structure of Council space. 847 member species, and not one of them has fought a real war in over 1,000 years. They've forgotten what actual combat looks like. Their idea of military action is sending overwhelming force against species that can't fight back. The transformation of human society had been remarkable. The threat of alien domination had ended centuries of conflict between nations. Resources that once went to fighting each other now flowed into a single massive project, preparing for the day when humanity would break free from their cage. Colonel Lisa Zhang reviewed reports from the hidden facilities. The Martian shipyards have completed their first battle cruiser. It's 1/10 the size of Council ships but twice as fast and completely invisible to their sensors. The asteroid belt mining operations are producing materials we never dreamed of using before. The most important development was happening in the outer solar system. There, hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid, humanity was building something the Council would never expect. The battle station Prometheus was larger than any structure ever built by humans, but it would appear to alien sensors as just another piece of space rock. Dr. Carter, now elderly but still leading xenobiology research, shared her team's findings about Council psychology. They suffer from what we might call institutional arrogance. 10,000 years of unopposed rule has made them incapable of recognizing threats that don't fit their expectations. They see primitive species as beneath notice until those species attack them directly. The humans had learned to think like their captors. Every message sent from Earth was carefully crafted to reinforce the Council's beliefs about human primitiveness. Radio transmissions spoke of internal conflicts and technological setbacks that didn't actually exist. When Council monitoring systems detected these signals, they confirmed what the aliens already believed: that humans were still fighting among themselves and making no real progress. Commander Sam Parker reviewed the latest intelligence reports from deep space probes. These tiny ships, no larger than satellites, had been slipping through the containment field for years, using Santos's phase shift technology. We've mapped their entire territory. 3 major fleet bases, 47 colony worlds, and hundreds of trade routes. Their ships follow predictable patterns because they've never had to worry about attack. The probes had discovered something even more valuable than military intelligence. The Council's member species were not as unified as they pretended to be. Old grudges and territorial disputes simmered beneath the surface of their perfect society. Many species remained in the Council not from choice but from fear of the consequences of leaving. Captain Tony Rodriguez, who had joined the space program after hearing about humanity's rejection, studied the alien ship designs. Their vessels are built for intimidation, not combat. Massive, slow, and loaded with weapons designed to destroy stationary targets. They've never faced an enemy that could move quickly or appear where they don't expect. The psychological warfare had been just as important as the technology. Dr. Patricia Moore, Earth's leading expert on alien cultures, had developed a comprehensive understanding of Council thinking. They believe in hierarchy and order above all else. The idea that a primitive species could threaten them is literally impossible for them to accept. This blind spot is our greatest weapon. As the years passed, human technology advanced at an incredible pace. Necessity and unlimited resources had created innovations that would have taken centuries under normal circumstances. Ships that could phase between dimensions, weapons that could penetrate any known shield, and manufacturing techniques that turned asteroids into fleets. But perhaps the most important change was in humanity itself. The species that had once fought constantly among themselves had learned to work together toward a common goal. The Council's dismissal had created exactly what they feared most, a unified, determined enemy with nothing left to lose. Lieutenant Julie Foster, now a squadron leader in the secret space fleet, looked at the newest fighter designs. "They're beautiful," she said to her fellow pilots. "Small, fast, and completely invisible to Council sensors. When the time comes, they won't know what hit them." The time was approaching faster than anyone expected. Recent intelligence suggested that the Council was planning a demonstration to remind other species what happened to those who challenged their authority. Earth had been selected as the target for this lesson. Williams looked around the command center at the faces of humanity's leaders. "They're coming," she announced. "Our deep space monitors have detected a massive fleet heading toward our solar system. 300 ships, the largest military force the Council has assembled in over 2 centuries. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Council hadn't forgotten about humanity after all. They were coming to make an example of the species that had been quietly preparing for this moment for over 2 decades. Dr. Chen stood up slowly. "Then it's time to show them what happens when you underestimate humans." Santos activated her phase shift communicator, sending coded messages to every hidden facility in the solar system. "All stations, this is command. Operation Breakout is now active. Repeat, Operation Breakout is active." Across the solar system, humanity's secret preparations came to life. Ships that had been hidden for years powered up their engines. Weapons, systems that existed only in theory, became deadly reality. The species that had been dismissed as primitive and quarantined like dangerous animals was about to show the galaxy what they were really capable of. Murphy pulled up the tactical display showing the approaching Council fleet. "They're coming." In a single formation, no advanced scouts broadcasting their intentions on open channels. "They want everyone to see what happens to species that displease them." Williams smiled grimly. "Perfect. Let's give them a demonstration they'll never forget." The cage was about to be broken from the inside, and the Council had no idea what they had created during those 23 years of isolation. Humanity's greatest teachers had been their captors' own arrogance and dismissal. Now it was time for the final exam. The UES Defiance hung in space just inside the containment field that had held humanity prisoner for 23 years. Commander Sam Parker looked at her crew of 12, all volunteers who knew they might not survive what came next. The ship was sleek and small compared to the massive Council vessels, but it represented something the aliens had never encountered: human determination combined with superior technology. "Engineering, report status," Parker said into her communication device. Lieutenant Tony Rodriguez checked his instruments carefully. "Phase shift drive is online and stable. Dimensional flux generators are operating within normal parameters. We're ready for transition, Commander." Parker nodded and opened a channel to Earth Command. "Control, this is Defiance. Beginning breakout attempt in 60 seconds. If we don't return, tell everyone that we proved it could be done." Director Williams's voice came back through the speakers. "Good luck, Sam. All of humanity is counting on you." The moment of truth had arrived. For over 2 decades, human scientists had worked to understand the Council's containment field. Maria Santos had developed the theoretical framework, but no one knew if it would actually work until someone tried it. The Defiance would be humanity's first attempt to break free from their cage. "Beginning phase shift sequence," Rodriguez announced. Transitioning to dimensional flux in 3, 2, 1. The universe changed around them. Reality seemed to bend and twist as the Defiance slipped between dimensions. The containment field, designed to stop ships traveling in normal spacetime, couldn't detect something that existed between worlds. For a few terrifying seconds, the crew felt like they were falling through an endless void. Then they were through. "We're clear of the perimeter," Parker whispered, hardly believing it was true. "Repeat, we are through the containment field. All systems normal. No pursuit detected." The celebration on Earth was brief. Breaking out was only the first step of a much larger plan. The Defiance had 3 months to gather intelligence about Council forces before returning home. What they discovered during those months would change everything. The ship's stealth systems, based on phase shift technology, made them completely invisible to Council sensors. Parker and her crew moved through alien space like ghosts, observing and recording everything they could find. What they saw amazed even humanity's most optimistic projections. The Council's military was a joke. Their massive dreadnoughts were designed for intimidation rather than actual combat. They moved slowly, communicated on open channels, and followed predictable patrol routes. Most shocking of all, the different alien species rarely coordinated their military activities. Each maintained its own fleet and operated according to its own rules. They have no unified command structure, reported Chief Intelligence Officer Ben Hayes during one of their regular transmissions to Earth. The Vorthak, Luminari, and Chitari each run their own operations. They only work together for ceremonial purposes. The Defiance's most daring mission came when they infiltrated a council meeting by disguising themselves as representatives of a minor species called the Bendari. The ship's computers had analyzed Bendari communication patterns and created false identification codes that fooled the aliens completely. Parker and 2 crew members attended a council session where High Counselor Zephyx discussed minor administrative matters. For 6 hours they watched the crystalline alien debate the proper pronunciation of words in a trade agreement, while completely ignoring reports of sensor anomalies in human space. Counselor Vexitar, one of the insectoid assistants, clicked nervously. There have been several unexplained readings from the quarantine sector. Zephix's crystal form pulsed with annoyed light. The primitive humans are probably testing crude rocket engines again. Such matters are beneath our attention. Continue with the pronunciation guidelines. Parker almost laughed out loud. The council was so arrogant that they dismissed clear evidence of human activity as meaningless noise. Their own superiority complex had made them blind to the truth. The intelligence gathering revealed something even more important than military weaknesses. Many council member species were unhappy with their situation but afraid to leave. The aquatic collective of Kepler 438b, the silicon-based entities of Wolf 359, and dozens of other civilizations remained in the council, not from loyalty, but from fear of punishment. During their second month of operation, the Defiance discovered a council punishment fleet heading toward a system where a species had tried to withdraw from membership. 200 ships surrounded the rebel world and turned its surface into glass within hours. The message was clear. Leaving the council meant death. They rule through fear, Hayes reported back to Earth. The member species aren't allies, they're hostages. The council maintains power by making examples of anyone who challenges them. The ship's computer systems, upgraded with alien technology stolen from abandoned facilities, cracked council encryption codes with ease. The aliens used no security because they had never faced an enemy capable of intercepting their communications. Every message, every order, and every strategic plan became available to human intelligence. Rodriguez monitored council military communications and discovered their doctrine was based on overwhelming force against helpless targets. They've never fought a real war, he told Parker. Their tactics assume the enemy will surrender immediately when faced with superior numbers. The most revealing discovery came during their third month when the Defiance observed a council war game. 3 fleets practiced attacking a simulated rebel world, but their exercise was a disaster. Ships collided because they couldn't coordinate movements. Communication systems failed under stress, and commanders argued about who had authority to make decisions. It's incredible, Parker said while watching the chaos. They have all the technology in the galaxy, but they don't know how to use it. They've been so dominant for so long that they've forgotten how to actually fight. The Defiance's return to Earth created enormous excitement. The ship slipped back through the containment field using the same phase shift technology that had allowed their escape. When they docked at the hidden station behind Ceres, crowds of scientists and military leaders waited to hear their report. The cage is broken, Parker announced to the assembled crowd. We can move freely through their space without detection. More importantly, we've learned that the Council is nowhere near as powerful as they pretend to be. The intelligence windfall was processed by teams of analysts who couldn't believe what they were reading. The Council's military was poorly organized. Their member species were restless, and their leadership was completely unprepared for a real threat. Human war planners began developing strategies that would have been impossible without this information. Dr. Carter, now in her 80s but still sharp, reviewed the cultural analysis. They suffer from institutional blindness. Success has made them incapable of recognizing failure. They literally cannot imagine being defeated by a species they consider primitive. Colonel Zhang studied the tactical data with growing excitement. Their ships are sitting ducks, large, slow, predictable, and completely dependent on intimidation. Our fighters could tear them apart before they knew what was happening. The most important discovery was that the Council had no contingency plans for dealing with phase shift technology. Their entire defensive strategy was based on detecting and destroying ships in normal space. Vessels that could appear and disappear at will were completely outside their experience. Admiral Cross, newly appointed Supreme Commander of Earth Defense Forces, looked at the intelligence reports with satisfaction. 23 years ago, they put us in a cage because they thought we were dangerous. They were right, but not in the way they expected. The Council's greatest mistake had been giving humanity time to prepare while completely ignoring them. During those years of isolation, humans had not only caught up to alien technology but surpassed it in crucial areas. Phase shift capability, advanced stealth systems, and superior tactics had made them invisible to their captors. Parker stood before the Earth Defense Council and delivered her final report. They're not gods, they're bureaucrats with fancy technology. They've ruled through fear and intimidation for so long that they've forgotten how to deal with a real challenge. When the time comes to fight, they won't know what hit them. The time for hiding was over. Humanity had broken free from their cage and learned everything they needed to know about their captors. The Council thought they had quarantined a primitive species until it could mature enough to join civilized society. Instead, they had created their own worst nightmare. An enemy that could strike without warning and disappear without a trace. The war was about to begin, and the Council still had no idea what was coming for them. Admiral Corthax of the Luminari floated in the command chamber of his flagship, watching as 300 Council vessels moved through space toward the quarantined human system. His energy form shifted from blue to purple with satisfaction as he contemplated the lesson they were about to teach the galaxy. It was the largest military force deployed by the Council in over 2 centuries, designed to make an example that would be remembered for millennia. Admiral, his aide reported, we're receiving the final authorization from High Counselor Zephyx. You are cleared to proceed with the punishment of the human species. Corthax pulsed with bright light. Excellent. It has been far too long since we reminded the galaxy what happens to species that forget their place. The humans thought they could test our containment field without consequences. Today they learn the price of defiance. What Admiral Corthax didn't know was that Colonel Lisa Zhang had been tracking his fleet's movement for weeks from her command post aboard the hidden battle station Prometheus. The hollowed-out asteroid that served as humanity's secret fortress looked like space debris to Council sensors, but inside it contained the most advanced military technology ever developed by humans. They're coming in exactly as our intelligence predicted, Zhang reported to Admiral Nathan Cross through a secure phase shift communication link. Single formation, no advanced scouts, broadcasting their intentions on open channels. They want the entire galaxy to witness what they think will be humanity's destruction. Cross studied the tactical displays from his command center on Earth. 300 alien ships against humanity's force of 60 phase shift fighters and a dozen support vessels. By traditional military thinking, it should have been a massacre, but the Council was about to learn that humans didn't fight traditional wars. They've made every mistake we hoped they would, Cross said to his staff. Predictable approach, no. Element of surprise and complete confidence in their overwhelming numbers. Operation Hammer is authorized. Show them what happens when you underestimate humanity. The human response began with a move that would have been impossible without phase shift technology. 60 fighters, each no larger than a Council shuttle, materialized inside the enemy formation like ghosts becoming real. The Council fleet, designed for long-range bombardment of stationary targets, suddenly found itself under attack from vessels that appeared and disappeared at will. Captain Julie Foster led Alpha Squadron in the first wave of attacks. Her fighter, slipping through dimensions to appear directly behind a massive Council dreadnought. "Target their command ships first," she ordered her pilots. "Cut off their head and the body will panic." Her weapon systems locked onto the alien vessel's bridge section and fired a concentrated burst of energy that sliced through their shields like they were made of paper. The Council ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, taking with it the fleet's secondary command structure. "What is happening?" Admiral Korthax demanded, as his sensors showed impossible readings. "Ships are appearing from nowhere. This cannot be real." His tactical officer, a nervous Chitauri named Zexcon, clicked its mandibles frantically. "Admiral, we're detecting weapons fire from vessels that don't exist on our sensors. Multiple command ships have been destroyed, but we cannot target the attackers." The Council fleet tried to respond with their standard overwhelming firepower doctrine, but their massive weapons were useless against enemies they couldn't see. Dreadnoughts fired wildly at empty space while human fighters appeared behind them, struck with precision, and vanished before return fire could find them. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Murphy, son of the intelligence officer who had helped plan this moment, phased his fighter directly into the center of a Council formation. His targeting computer identified the fleet's communication relay ship and destroyed it with a single missile. Suddenly, the alien forces couldn't coordinate their movements or share information about the attacks. "They're shooting at shadows," Murphy reported to Foster with grim satisfaction. "Their sensors can't track us when we're phase shifted, and they're too panicked to think clearly." The battle that followed wasn't really a battle at all. It was a systematic dismantling of everything the Council thought they knew about warfare. Human fighters struck with surgical precision, targeting command centers, weapon systems, and communication arrays, while remaining completely invisible to alien defenses. Commander Sarah Blake, leading Beta Squadron, watched through her cockpit as a massive Vorthak dreadnought fired its main weapons at a location where her fighter had been 30 seconds earlier. The aliens were fighting ghosts, wasting ammunition on empty space while real threats materialized behind them. "Their formation is collapsing," Blake reported. "The big ships are actually getting in each other's way. They never learned to fight as a coordinated unit." High Counselor Zephyx received the first reports of the disaster from his crystalline palace on Zarian Prime. The initial message was brief and confusing, something about impossible attacks and invisible enemies. Zephyx dismissed it as panic from inexperienced commanders who had never faced real combat. Then the reports started arriving faster. Dozens of ships destroyed, hundreds more damaged, and the proud Council fleet in full retreat. The humans hadn't just defeated their punishment force. They had humiliated it in front of the entire galaxy. "This is impossible," Zephyx declared to his advisors, his crystal form flickering with confused light. "Humans are primitive. Their technology is crude. How can they defeat our finest military force?" Counselor Vexitar arrived in the chamber, its insectoid form trembling with rage. "Because we were wrong about everything," the Chitauri leader said bitterly. "The humans never accepted their quarantine. They used those 23 years to develop technology we cannot understand or counter." The battle in human space lasted only 30 minutes, but its effects would be felt across the galaxy for decades. The Council's punishment fleet limped away with less than half its original strength, leaving behind 87 destroyed vessels and thousands of dead. Human casualties numbered exactly 0. Admiral Korthax, his energy form dim with defeat, broadcast a retreat order to his surviving ships. The admiral who had arrived expecting easy victory now faced the impossible task of explaining to the Council how they had been defeated by a supposedly primitive species. "All vessels, withdraw to the outer perimeter," Korthax ordered, his voice lacking its earlier confidence. "We need time to analyze these new weapons and develop countermeasures." But the humans weren't finished. As the Council fleet retreated, phase shift-enabled reconnaissance probes followed them home, mapping their escape routes and identifying their base locations. Every piece of intelligence gathered would be used to plan the next phase of humanity's campaign. Colonel Zhang watched the alien retreat from her command center and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Phase 1 complete. The Council now knows they're in a real war, but they still don't understand what they're fighting. The news of humanity's victory spread through Council space faster than official reports could suppress it. Member species that had lived in fear of Council retaliation for centuries suddenly saw hope. If humans could defeat the mighty Council fleet, perhaps freedom was possible after all. On the water world of Kepler 438b, the aquatic collective's leadership held emergency meetings in their deepest ocean trenches. Ambassador Flowing Tide spoke, words that would have been treason just days earlier. The humans have shown us something we forgot existed, the possibility of successful resistance. Similar conversations took place on hundreds of worlds throughout Council space. The myth of invincibility that had held the galactic government together for millennia was shattered in 30 minutes by a species the Council had dismissed as unworthy of attention. Admiral Cross reviewed the battle reports from Earth with deep satisfaction. The plan had worked perfectly, but more importantly, it had revealed something crucial about their enemies. They're not just technologically inferior, he told his staff. They're psychologically unprepared for real conflict. Fear has been their primary weapon for so long that they've forgotten how to fight when fear isn't enough. Dr. Carter, monitoring alien communications from her research facility, reported growing chaos throughout Council space. Their member species are questioning Council authority for the first time in centuries. Some are already reaching out through back channels trying to establish contact with us. The war had officially begun, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of a long, bloody conflict, humanity's first victory had triggered a psychological collapse among their enemies. The Council's greatest strength, their reputation for invincibility, had become their greatest weakness when that reputation was proven false. Captain Foster returned to the Prometheus with her squadron intact and their mission accomplished. As she climbed out of her fighter, she was greeted by cheering crowds of technicians and support staff who had worked for decades to make this moment possible. How did it feel? Zhang asked her. Foster smiled grimly. Like shooting fish in a barrel. They had no idea what hit them, and by the time they figured it out, it was too late to fight back. The Council's biggest mistake was finally becoming clear to everyone involved. 2 years after the Battle of Seoul, the war was over, but not in the way anyone had expected. The Galactic Council's iron grip on hundreds of worlds had shattered not through continued military defeat, but through something far more devastating, the complete collapse of their authority. High Counselor Zephyk stood alone in the Council chambers on Xerion Prime, his crystalline form dim and fractured. The vast hall that had once hosted representatives from 847 species now echoed with emptiness. Most of the member species had already signed separate peace agreements with humanity, abandoning the Council to save themselves. The first defection had been the aquatic collective of Kepler 438b. Ambassador Flowing Tide had arrived at the newly established human diplomatic station with a simple message. His people wanted to join the winning side. Dr. Patricia Moore, humanity's chief negotiator, had been surprised by how quickly the alien diplomat was willing to abandon millennia of Council membership. Your people fight like nothing we've seen, Flowing Tide had admitted during their first meeting. You don't just defeat your enemies, you make them irrelevant. We wish to ally with you, not face the same fate as the Council's military. The flood of defections that followed had been remarkable. The silicon-based entities of Wolf 359, the gas giant dwellers of Kepler 442, and dozens of other civilizations all reached out to humanity with offers of alliance. They brought with them detailed intelligence about Council weaknesses and resources that would have taken humans decades to acquire on their own. What truly ended the war was humanity's response to these overtures. Instead of demanding tribute or territory like the Council had done, humans offered something unprecedented. Genuine partnership based on mutual respect and shared goals. Captain Morrison, now Admiral Morrison despite his advanced age, led the EI final operation of the war. It wasn't a military assault on Xerion Prime, but something that would have been unthinkable just years earlier. A humanitarian mission to the Council's capital world. The Council leadership had locked themselves in underground bunkers expecting a siege that never came. Instead of orbital bombardment, Humanity brought food, medical supplies, and engineers to repair infrastructure damaged during the Council's panicked retreat from their own surface installations. Morrison's fleet arrived at Zerion Prime Broadcasting, offers of assistance rather than demands for surrender. The Admiral's message to the planet was simple and direct. We come not as conquerors, but as neighbors offering help to those in need. The sight of human medics treating wounded Vorthak, civilians and human engineers restoring power to hospitals was broadcast across the galaxy. Species that had expected humanity to seek revenge for their quarantine instead saw mercy and competence working together. High Counselor Zephyx finally emerged from his bunker 3 days after the human fleet arrived. He found Admiral Morrison, coordinating relief efforts in what had been the Council's main administrative complex. The elderly human was directing the repair of communication systems that would allow Zerion Prime to contact its scattered colonies. "Why?" Zephyx asked, his crystal form pulsing with confused light. "We tried to destroy you. We dismissed you as primitives and locked you away like dangerous animals. Why are you helping us?" Morrison looked up from the damage reports he was reviewing. "Because that's what humans do, Counselor. We don't just win wars. We try to make sure everyone understands why the war was necessary in the first place." The formal surrender ceremony took place in the same chamber where humanity had first been rejected 46 years earlier. But instead of the humiliation that Zephyx expected, Admiral Morrison proposed something that shocked the remaining council members: the creation of a new galactic union, where species would be judged by their actions rather than their prejudices. Dr. Coy Carter, now 91 years old but still mentally sharp, stood in the same spot where she had once been silenced by council arrogance. "The council's biggest mistake wasn't underestimating our technology," she said to the assembled delegates from across the galaxy. "It was underestimating our capacity to grow, adapt, and ultimately forgive." The new galactic union that emerged from the ashes of the council was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of a rigid hierarchy maintained by fear, it became a voluntary association of species working together toward common goals. Humanity served not as the dominant power, but as mediators and guides helping others learn to cooperate. The transformation was remarkable. Species that had been enemies for centuries found ways to work together when freed from council interference. Trade flowed more freely than ever before. Scientific research accelerated as knowledge was shared openly, and conflicts were resolved through negotiation rather than threats. Commander Parker, now promoted to Admiral and serving as humanity's Chief Military Advisor, established new defense protocols for the Union. Instead of massive fleets designed to intimidate rebellious worlds, the new military structure focused on rapid response teams that could provide assistance during emergencies or natural disasters. "We learned something important during our quarantine," Parker explained to the Union's first joint military conference. "The best way to maintain peace isn't through overwhelming force, but through proving that everyone benefits more from cooperation than conflict." The integration of former council species into the new Union proceeded smoothly, helped by humanity's insistence on treating former enemies as future partners. The Vorthak's expertise in crystal-based technology, the Luminari's mastery of energy, manipulation, and the Chitari's advanced biological sciences all became assets for the entire galaxy, rather than tools for maintaining control. Maria Santos, now Director of Interdimensional Research, worked with alien scientists to develop applications for phase shift technology that went far beyond military uses. Transportation between distant worlds became faster and safer. Communication across galactic distances became instantaneous, and exploration of previously unreachable regions of space opened new frontiers for all species. The most remarkable change was in the former council leadership itself. Zephyx, freed from the burden of maintaining an empire through fear, discovered a talent for diplomatic mediation. The ancient Vorthak became one of the Union's most effective ambassadors, helping to resolve disputes between species that had been enemies for millennia. "I spent 10,000 years believing that order required dominance," Zephyx admitted during a private conversation with Admiral Morrison. "Humans taught us that true order comes from willing cooperation, not forced submission." The Union's expansion beyond the former Council territory proceeded rapidly as word spread about the new organization's approach to governance. Species that had remained isolated to avoid Council attention now sought membership in a system that valued diversity and independence. Within a decade, the Galactic Union included over 2,000 member species, far exceeding the Council's membership at its peak. The difference was that these species joined because they wanted to, not because they were forced to choose between membership and destruction. Ryan Murphy, now Director of Interspecies Intelligence, regularly briefed Union leadership on threats from outside their territory, but increasingly, these threats were resolved through diplomacy backed by the Union's reputation for fair dealing rather than military intervention. The galaxy has learned that we're more dangerous as friends than we ever were as enemies, Murphy reported. Species that might have considered attacking isolated worlds think twice about challenging an organization that includes humanity and all our allies. The final measure of humanity's success came when the historical records were updated. The quarantine that had been intended as punishment became remembered as the period when humanity developed the strength and wisdom necessary to lead galactic civilization into a new era. Admiral Cross, now retired but still consulted on major decisions, often reflected on how completely the situation had changed. 46 years ago, we were told we weren't worthy to join galactic civilization. Today, we're teaching that civilization how to live up to its own ideals. The transformation of the galaxy continued to accelerate as more species discovered the benefits of the Union's approach. Research stations that had been restricted to single species became collaborative efforts involving dozens of different civilizations. Trade routes that had been controlled by Council monopolies became open highways benefiting everyone. Dr. Carter spent her final years documenting the changes that had swept across the galaxy since humanity's emergence from quarantine. Her historical analysis became required reading for diplomats throughout Union space. The Council's greatest weakness was their belief that they already knew everything worth knowing, she wrote. They looked at humanity and saw exactly what they expected to see, a primitive, violent species unworthy of consideration. They never imagined that those same traits that made us seem dangerous could be channeled into making us the most effective peacemakers the galaxy had ever seen. 50 years after first contact, historians throughout the galaxy marked humanity's quarantine as the turning point that led to the greatest era of peace and prosperity in galactic history.